Welcome back, Shaman King fans, to another episode of What's the Difference, where I compare a given media's various different adaptations. In this case, it is the Shaman King 2001 anime and the 2021 anime. And as we near the end, with including these episodes I'm going over, 3 episodes left for each adaptation, I'm seeing how the endings stack up to each other at these points, because the newer anime follows the manga as closely as possible, and the original anime diverged quite some time ago. And being down to the wire like this, we are at volume 33 of the manga, chapter 288, titled Falling Damko. For the original anime, we're at episode 62, titled Die Collision. And for the newer anime, we're at episode 50, titled Falling Damko. Now, I'll start off right off the bat by saying that the major comparison here is just that Hao is making his way to becoming Shaman King in both versions, and our heroes are desperately fighting to prevent that. The difference being that in the original anime, our heroes are fighting against Hao, while Yo's soul has been consumed by Hao, so it's a very desperate situation. Whereas in the manga and newer anime, our heroes are fighting against the Patch, as Hao has officially won the title of Shaman King, and he's slowly undergoing the process, which actually involves him dying and becoming one with the Great Spirit as a whole. And our heroes are in a mad dash to get there. So all versions has this desperate sense of the need to get to Hao and prevent his ascension. But I want to start off by looking at the original anime first, and then we'll look at the manga and newer anime. Now, for the original anime, Yo has been absorbed by Hao. The Asakura family finds out about this, and some of the shamans who have allied with Yo in the past, or at least become friends with them, have found out about Hao's machinations about trying to take the Great Spirit by force, and so they want to try to join in and help stop all of this. Meanwhile, we see that Yo has fallen, and his friends are in disbelief. And Hao more or less kind of taunts them by saying, Yo's not dead. He never really existed to begin with. He was a part of my soul. He's just gone back to where he belongs. That's all. Why you mad, bro? And of course, Yo's friends lose it and go after Hao. But of course, it's to no avail. Hao's just too powerful. But that doesn't mean that Yo's friends aren't going to still try to take him down. Hao is just unstoppable. But Anna also chooses to take up Yo's fight. And so the alliance forms in order to take down Hao, no matter how impossible it seems. And we see Yo within Hao's soul, essentially, as it attempts to kind of break Yo down and assimilate with him. And unlike in the manga, Yo's friends and family, and the friends and family of everyone else, they're more sitting around worried rather than just kind of accepting that, they might not make it through till tomorrow. Anna tries to hold Hao down, but, she's essentially using Hao's techniques. And unlike in the original unlike in the manga, where he destroys Zenki and Goki, at least one of them, he has them turn on Anna. And so Silva and Talum have to step in, telling everyone, don't fight in anger, plan. Meanwhile, Godiva explains to the shamans who came to help that because of what Hao has done, the Great Spirit is in turmoil. Meanwhile, Hao sends Zenki and Goki to hold everyone off so he can become one with the Great Spirit. Yo's friends desperately try to fight against them, but it's pretty much to no avail. But Manta sees that they're just going in blindly, and Mosuke appears to Manta so he can try to give everyone a bit of insight. And we'll take a little break from the original anime there and go in a bit with the manga and newer anime, where Talum has called Horohoro out by his real name, and Horohoro takes great offense to that. Love his eyes. And Horohoro says that his true name is the name of a person who killed the woman he loved. And thus we enter Horohoro's flashback. We cut to Horohoro and Hokkaido, where a young girl who had just moved in tries to make friends with him, and she's the one who nicknamed him Horohoro. We find that she's actually the daughter of a man who came here in order to build a dam, and that's how she ended up with the nickname Damko. And Horohoro was also kind of an outcast because he's a shaman, and shamans are able to see things, they're spiritual, and in more modern society they're kind of seen as weird, spirituality and all that. But Damako was also an outcast, but unfortunately it comes from the fact that the dam that her dad was building was going to end up putting a nearby village underwater. And so the people took it out on her by treating her as an outcast. But Horohoro kind of having something in common with her, they ended up bonding, fellow outcasts, as it were. However, the, I guess, elder, I don't know if this was his grandfather or the elder of the village, but he was told not to associate with the girl, which is very cruel. She has nothing to do with what her father is doing. She has no choice in the matter. But the elder says to treat her as if that were the case. Because Horohoro has such a responsibility to his tribe, he's a man of his tribe, this, that, and the other. He is the future of this tribe, and it is his duty to fight for his tribe, essentially. Something that, while Horohoro was young, he could understand to a certain degree. A lot of prejudice is given to his people, and they've had to fight and scrape for what they wanted in life. The anime cuts out the fact that it was half a year later that Damako even tried to talk to Horohoro again because he had completely just brushed her off. But you can kind of tell from the fact that we went from summer to winter, and Damako just wants an answer why she's being shut out. Is it that he thinks that she is a curse too? Like, what happened? She at least just wants a response. They had this promise to view the butterbur fields in the spring, which immediately tells you of why Horohoro has the connection to the butterbur fields. But Horohoro says nothing because that's what he's been ordered to do. He's too young, he's not able to make his own choices, he's too respectful of his culture. I like this intercut that the anime does, where in the manga we just cut to what happens later, but you see in the anime a young Horohoro kind of wondering where Damako went to, only for it to turn out that she actually had died in the snow that day that Horohoro ran away from her. Apparently she had gotten lost up in the mountains and perished. And of course Horohoro blames himself because he was the last person to see her. He thinks the thought of maybe had I done something that day, maybe had I said something, he left nothing but regret between the two of them. And so we find out the real reason that Horohoro wants to be Shaman King. Now, it is to make a giant field of butterbur, but it is also to it's a symbolic apology to her, to be able to maybe show her spirit on the other side, what he has created, as a kind of form of apology, or at least that's my interpretation. And so Horohoro strikes out, because in the end, his village was still destroyed, it was still flooded, and he still lost the girl that he really cared about. Honestly, the anime did a phenomenal job with that. Although they do kind of lessen the impact of Horohoro's punch, because in the anime it just looks like, oh yeah, Caleb's face got a little frozen. No. In the manga, no, a good chunk of his cheek is just shattered off by frostbite, but Caleb feels like he can finally go all out. But of course, Yo is shocked by the fact that Horohoro has been carrying around something that heavy for so long. This sin that Horohoro has taken upon himself. And he decides that, should he fall here, this is the least he can do for not being upfront to his friend. But then Kororo speaks for the first time. And again, the anime does a masterful job in depicting this, because in the manga, it's kind of crunched. It's kind of crunched in there, all within this one chapter. But the anime does such a phenomenal job. And we find that Kororo was all along Damko. Although the anime does cut out just the sheer surprise that everyone really has, and some of the lines they have where, even Ren is just like, wait, Kororo? Lyser gets shocked that Kororo can talk. Yo is actually shocked that Kororo was actually a human spirit this entire time. And how questions like, how are you here? And we find that she is only here because Horohoro finally acknowledged her existence, finally talked about her to other people. She tells the story of the day she died and how, instead of moving on to the great beyond, she tethered herself to where she was. Very much like how in the early days of the Shaman King manga specifically, because the anime skipped right over all of that. But the manga early on had, spirits who had taken root on Earth. And you even see that with Amidamaru, spirits with unfinished business. But the Korapokoro were worried about her. There was always the chance she might turn into a malicious spirit, especially given the nature of her death. And, considering how she died too, she wouldn't really be able to move around freely. But Damko was desperate to find out why Horohoro turned his back on her. And that's when Horohoro's dad's spirit, Gororo, showed up with a proposal. And some of the details are actually left out too, but Gororo trained her in order to become a forest spirit. And this was a way for her to potentially become a spirit ally to Horohoro and join him on his journey. Now, it's a good way of also showing how she was able to obtain power in order to be useful to a shaman. None of that is explained, but that's what I hypothesize. But, it's also explained that she will be a Korapokoro, forever. It was only in a moment like this, when Horohoro's feelings towards her and his memories of her came fully to the surface, that she would be able to return to her human form, if only for a brief moment. Damko took a real big long shot on this, and she just happy to know that, he didn't forget about her. This lingering regret is able to a certain degree, be laid to rest. And she is simply happy to be able to remain as his spirit companion. It's a ham-fisted situation, honestly. I can't deny that. But I love it to death. And I loved it in the manga. This is one of the few situations where I think the anime did an amazing and better job than the manga. This is the one situation where I preferred the anime over the manga. And this is a great weight off of Horohoro's chest as well, because, there's nothing for him to blame himself about. There's no malice from Damko towards him about how she died or anything like that. All she ever cared about was just knowing that they were still friends. And the question kind of becomes, did Talum know all along? Did he have an inkling? Because this did nothing but help Horohoro. This aided Horohoro, because this creates a deeper bond between Horohoro and Kororo. And though we don't see it, this gives Horohoro even more power than before, power to defeat Talum, which we don't even see, because the important part was the relationship between Damko and Horohoro. And so Talum is buried, and everyone laments the situation, but they also know that Horohoro has a lot to process. And so it's time to move on to the jungle plant, or the forest plant, where their enemy just hides, basically trying to run down the clock on them. And it's more explained in the manga, but the patch-efficient hiding really screws them over, because if the door doesn't open, they can't get to How. If they can't get to How, he just becomes Shaman King, and they fail without even fully making it to their destination. Not to mention, it's a huge area, and incredibly, the manga even explains that Chocolove, despite his sense of smell, can't sense anything. Lyserg's dowsing can't pick up anything. And yeah, this is Renom, and this is his whole plan. And his plan is just to basically wait it out. And his ability allows him to mask every aspect of his presence. If he doesn't want to be found, he won't be found. It's actually a brilliant plan. Now, a huge amount of dialogue is cut out here. And that mostly comes from the fact that a lot of it doesn't really add up to much, which is unfortunate because it goes a long way to helping to understand the train of thought of everyone. So in the manga, Lyserg proposes burning the jungle to the ground, smoking out their opponent. But Chocolove says that no, that would be a waste of energy. But Ren, he knows what Lyserg is planning. And Ren says, oh, I'll send electricity through the river. That way he'll have nowhere to run. So Renom thinks, oh, okay, they're falling into my trap. But Lyserg says, oh no, that was just a joke. But I have a better idea of where he might be hiding. There was no response to what we said, so he can't be in the woods or the river. So we've narrowed down our choices a little bit. And Ren says, yeah, he's probably a coward with the way that he's hiding. More than likely, he's eavesdropping on us, which means he's probably within earshot. And this starts to annoy Renom because they're talking down to him, but they're also correct, which just pisses him off even more. And Chocolove kind of helps things along by saying, but wouldn't you just be wasting a lot of energy if he's not here? But Lyserg says, oh no, it's totally worth it. And then he calls out Renom's name, which shocks Renom. And Lyserg is just like, of course I know your name. We've already seen you and your spirit ally. He deduces every patch had a place that helped them play to their strengths, or at least was kind of a comfortable place for their spirit ally. In a jungle, that's the perfect place for a chameleon, and more than likely he's also keeping an eye on them and listening to them, which narrows down the places he's hiding even more. And so, Lyserg deduces he's right up there, on top of the door, right on the money. And Renom's mind races. How did he figure it out? My exact position? No intel at all? It's gotta be a trick. But what if it isn't? Maybe I should strike at them. And Lyserg says, oh no, I'm just kidding. I was just buying time. The only surefire way of knowing where you are is Opachow, because she could sense your presence. And why does Opachow sense his presence? Because all Renom can do is think. Think and think and think and think. Mind racing. And the more they try to figure things out, the more he thinks. The closer they get to his location, the more he thinks. Even if they're wrong, he's still thinking about what they're saying. Thoughts that Opachow can hear. Thoughts that are keeping Opachow awake. Thoughts that are pissing Opachow off. And thus Opachow utterly destroys Renom, which to a certain degree probably should have been possible with just one strike. I have to assume that Renom's ability is he puts all of his Furyoku towards invisibility and nothing towards defense or attack power. And having been caught, it disrupts any of his Furyoku. He's compromised, he's scared, he's worried, he's panicking. He knows he's in trouble, and thus he is just in no state to fight, and thus Opachow, with only 800 Furyoku, easily takes him down. It was immensely lucky that they had Opachow. They would have been screwed otherwise, despite the fact that Lyserg figured it out, but they had no way of knowing. But Ren wants to know a little bit about Opachow's powers. How do they work exactly? And Yo says that goes back to when Hao spent the night. Oh yeah, I never said the previous chapter that we just went over was titled Invisible Jungle, just so you know. And now we enter into chapter 290. Cats take a shine to the loneliest people, which is true. And Yo's mind was racing at night, and Hao couldn't sleep because of it. And so Hao knows that Yo wanted to know the secrets of mind reading. And mind readers all have one thing in common: loneliness. And some of this dialogue is kept out of the newer anime, where Hao says that the ability to see ghosts is the ability to see a human soul, the power to see inside someone. But for some, it can go even deeper than that. The simple thought of, I wonder what that person is thinking. Do they hate me? Strong feelings become a honed sense, and thus you are able to see the thoughts of people. This was true for Anna. Abandoned by her parents, a sad and lonely childhood, constantly wondering about the thoughts of all the adults that she met, with the question, will I be abandoned once again? The ability comes from a want for trust, camaraderie, companionship. This want for acceptance can leave you prone, and thus the dark thoughts of others came flooding in, giving birth to demons, and how even compliments Yo on managing to rescue Anna from that deep darkness. But Yo says he didn't do it alone. It's mostly thanks to Masamune, and how talks about his old friend Ochia, a spirit that he knew that he eventually drove away, and that's how Opacho got their name. Ahachio Opacho. And ultimately Hao says everybody essentially has the potential to read minds. But Yo does wonder, with having Opacho by their side, what does that mean? Even Ryu kind of questions, it's just like, why would he open up like that? Give away his secret? And I love Horohoro. It's just like, so essentially he's just a drama queen. Which Horohoro is honestly kind of right. Like, Hao wants to be understood. That's Horohoro's takeaway from this. And he's not wrong. And Ren knows that Yo wants to save Hao ultimately, but Ren also knows that they probably won't be able to defeat Hao, and he realizes that maybe the true purpose of the shaman fight isn't to defeat Hao, and thus Ren has his own resolve in the caravan plan, where he meets none other than Nichrom. And now let's cut back to the original anime, where Zenki and Goki are wrecking our heroes something fierce. Like, these things are powerful. But Banta manages to come in, thanks to Mosuke, and just dominate them in an instant. And he's basically telling everyone, don't lose yourselves to your anger and your feelings. You need to control your emotions. Emotions are how you gain better control over your Furyoku. That's why you're having so much trouble in this fight. And of course, Manta is white from what he just did, and thus everyone needs to cool their heads a little bit. That way they can properly take down these beasts. And thus by combining their power, they're easily able to defeat both Zenki and Goki, and thus they know they need Anna in order to seal Hao's movements to have a better chance of taking him down, skipping over a lot of the Yo and Hao's soul thing. And thus Hao has made his way to the Great Spirit, and with his power, he's able to remove the barrier that protects the Great Spirit, even from being visible to regular shaman. Meanwhile, the other shamans want to go in and help out because they're not going to accept Hao, especially because of how he's going about becoming the Shaman King. But now, the Great Spirit and Hao are visible to all the shamans in the town, so they know how desperate the situation has become. And the Spirit of Fire is prepared to consume the Great Spirit. But here comes the cavalry, with everyone somehow obtaining flight abilities. I swear, the giant oversouls, they're cool to a certain extent, but it's just like, it is such an excuse for giant kaiju battles. They're not bad. I do like the giant oversouls to an extent. It's just, I always thought the armored oversouls were cooler. But as Anna prepares to seal away Hao's movements, Hao is at least a little bit on the ropes from the onslaught of power going up against him. However, Hao is unfazed by all of this. But the plan wasn't to defeat him with this. It was just to give Anna an opportunity. And so the opportunity presents itself. Hao should be vulnerable and open to all of their most powerful attacks. But it also means potentially destroying what was left of Yo, but they make peace with that and go on the attack. Only for Hao's power to be completely unmatched. All of their attacks miss, thrown off course by the sheer force of Hao's abilities. What they thought was their last resort was not even a possibility, as everyone is thrown hurtling to the ground. And Hao's just like, you really think I'd be taken down the same way twice? But Ren, he's not ready to give up just yet. And neither is everybody else. They're ready to keep fighting right up into the last. But Hao sees no threat from them, thus ending the episode. Meanwhile, back to the manga and newer anime. It's Nichrom saying, come at me. All at once, I'll take y'all on. But Ren, he wants a piece. He's just like, we know you want to come after me. After all, I did kill your brother. Now, again, some dialogue is cut out. Nichrom questions Ren bringing out his old weapon, thinking, okay, are you trying to patronize me to get a rise out of me? Is that what this is? It's not gonna work. I'm a patch-efficient. I do nothing but my job. But if you want to throw down, let's throw down. But Ren, he's unimpressed. He finds the attacks to be lacking, easily managing to encounter Nichrom, going in for his weakest abilities, like classic integration, the sword dance, blade dance. It honestly ends up looking like a slaughter. They do cut out Ryu wondering, it's just like, wait, why didn't he just kill Nichrom right there? As Ren just pulls Nichrom up by the ponytail. But Ren wants Nichrom to stop playing around, but Nichrom is desperate not to show his true emotions. Wants to bring honor to the patch. But Ren is just like, how are you bringing honor by losing like a bitch? It's like, hate me. Be true to yourself. Do not deny your emotion. And of course, Nichrom feels a little called out. It's just like, what do you think you are, Talum, trying to solve my problems? And he takes offense to the thought that Ren is trying to help him deal with his hatred. But Ren, he says, we'll deal with whatever comes my way and help to end the cycle of hatred. He's on a quest to become a better person, and he feels that he's finally found his answer. Ren knows how to kill hate. It is through suffering, through atonement, through moving on. He knows that Nichrom is holding something back, more than just his emotion. As we move into chapter 291, Hate Me, Nichrom, or you will never be able to defeat me, which is a hell of a title. And Nichrom acknowledges us like, okay, of course you had my number. Then don't regret what's about to happen. As he brings out his brother's oversoul purple kick. The oversoul of his brother, the spirit of his brother. And they cut out a good chunk of Nichrom's dialogue, which is very unfortunate. I love the epiphany that Nichrom comes to. He's like, I was trying so hard to honor my position, but I was unable to just summon my brother's spirit. I was bestowed a great honor, but I couldn't even embrace it because of my own sadness. So much that even the murderer of my brother, the reason for my sorrow, is even chastising me. And so this way, he fights with no regrets. He has the potential to avenge his brother and do his duty all at the same time. He frees his heart from the restraint and goes all in. And Purple Kick is fast. Insanely fast. And so finally it looks like Ren can get started. But was this a good thing or a bad thing? As using his own spirit ally, the Scorpion, Nichrom poisons Ren pretty badly. And in the manga, Nichrom kind of acknowledges that Ren is very powerful. But with the poison running through his veins, he feels that Ren will be weakened enough that Nichrom might have a better advantage. But at the same time, the venom won't disappear without the death of Nichrom, and thus Ren can fight back without regret as well. And so they unleash their best attacks. Ren's Bushin Yuchi and Nichrom's Yellow Whip and Purple Kick. Now, I gotta admit, the clash is depicted a little bit better in the manga, they straight up clash, Whereas in the anime, it's just Nichrom dodging Ren's ability with the lightning, and ultimately Nichrom is taken down. But, I mean, granted, the anime at least shows that Nichrom was taken down. The manga leaves it a little bit more ambiguous, and then Faust deals with any of the poison, residual poison or whatever. Although Yo questions Ren's choice to be so reckless, though Yo does say that, well, maybe at least this way Nichrom will be able to rest in peace. And Yo questions if this is the path that Ren has decided to take. But Ren, he's not so sure. There's a lot of hate that could eat away at him, and he wonders if maybe he'll just become a demon. But Yo dismisses this. The way to kill hate is with love. You know, something that Marco even said. I love them bringing that back. It's just like, defeat how? With love. With love, hate has no room in your heart. And Yo says something that, oddly enough, Ren actually kind of takes to heart in the future. The idea of starting a family, replacing hate with love. Although the anime also cuts out the little bit of gentle teasing that Ryu, Chocolove, and Horohoro give to Ren. The anime also cuts out the fact that Talum's coffee shop is also in the next plant, as he kind of introduces himself to no one, saying, I am Talum, guardian of the plant of the shore. I don't much care for this fighting business, but I suppose my hands are tied. Yeah, he was the coffee shop owner when Yo and Hao were having their little conversation. As we enter into chapter 292, Tenacious Sproutling, as the Shaman King's birth nears, and everyone feels the intensity of that dark atmosphere that lets them know that Hao will awaken soon as the Shaman King. So they have to hurry to the 8th plant, the beach, the ocean. Although the anime also cuts out the fact that they're a little taken off guard by the fact that there's a cafe on the beach. And then Yo realizes, wait, a cafe? And he's just like, yeah, I'm Talum, officiant of the plant. And honestly, some of the dialogue from Talum is a little bit different in the manga, where it makes it sound like even he wishes to interfere with Hao's ascension, but can't. Whereas in the anime, it seems more like he's just like, I'm just doing my duty. But he's still like, come at me. Ren wants to be the first one to go in, although the anime cuts out the fact that Ren wanted to go in because he's just like, yeah, I know how strong these guys can actually be. I just want to go in with my ability and just find out what he can do as quickly as possible. So he goes in with his God of Thunder, only for us to find that Talum is impervious to lightning, because he's a grass type. He has roots that ground him, thus diverting the electricity. He controls the spirits of plant life, and thus Horohoro's just like, okay. After him briefly brushing off Ren, he's just like, plants can't stand the cold, so let's go in like that. Only for Talum to grow skunk cabbage, and for us to find out that Talum has multiple spirit allies, which isn't anything new. Skunk cabbage is the ability to bloom below freezing, and thus Ren and Horohoro are tied up. But in comes Ryu, with his slicing and dicing. And the question becomes, well, what do you do against a sharp sword? And for Talum, it's simple. Bullet seeds! Launching them right at Ryu. Although we cut out the explanation by Talum where he says, I'm afraid garden balsam seed pods tend to explode. It helps to spread the flower's growth far and wide, which is true. Certain plants do have explosive seed ejectors in order to make sure that the seeds are able to get to a wide enough area. That way, there's a greater chance of reproduction. And then he brings out his Margina tokelis, which is a cactus that has a great deal of water that could even quench Lyserg's flame. It's made very apparent that Talum has a lot of power and a lot of spirit allies at his disposal. And worst of all, plant spirits are very efficient on Furyoku. They do cut out Yo being like, Talum, I knew you were something special. That's unfortunate. I kind of like the camaraderie that Yo has towards Talum, but it looks like it's Chocolove's time to shine as we enter into chapter 293, The Wind's True Power. They also cut out the fact that Chocolove acknowledges that, during all of this, I haven't really gotten to do anything. I haven't gotten my time to shine yet. And Talum knows exactly who Chocolove is. And Chocolove wants to go in and make this quick as possible. But then Talum brings out a Rafflesia, otherwise known as the corpse plant. Intense smell. They also cut out Chocolove accidentally stabbing his nose with his own claws. But Chocolove's not ready to give up just yet. But then Talum brings out the big guns, ready to unleash a massive barrage of seeds. And that many firing in all directions? Ooh, that's gonna be tough. And then the anime also cuts out Lyserg questioning why it seems like Talum is worried about Chocolove. And Lyserg wonders if there's a deeper secret to Chocolove's power over wind. And Chocolove starts thinking, okay, everyone has these powers, and my power is the power of wind. But what's the ultimate form of that wind? How do I command it to its fullest extent? And Chocolove kind of figures something out, and thus he injects Ava and Mick into the wind, in the air, essentially. And Lyserg analyzes it and realizes, into the atmosphere, just like the spirit of fire. And that blows away the seeds. Now, this is difficult to control. And Chocolove even wonders how was How able to channel it like this. But this dries out Talum's oversoul. Intense and heavy winds can dry out the land. And Talum has realized that he needs to take Chocolove down because there's so much potential within him. But Chocolove's ready for him. You don't get to see the attack in the anime, but in the manga, he does Ayers Rock for real. Essentially just crushing Talum, I think. But Chocolove thinks about it. It's just like, I don't think he went all out. And he thinks it's weird that they're only doing things one against everyone. Aren't they protecting the plants? Wouldn't it be easier to just gang up on them? They also cut out Ryu acknowledging how strong Chocolove has gotten. But he knows they're going all out. But he feels like he's understanding something important about this. And they'll truly gain their answers in the next fight against Silva. Thus ending the chapter and the episode. So not too much comparative tissue. Both episodes, both series, both new and old, it's the desperate struggle, the fights, trying to get to How, stop him before he ascends. Same thing we've been dealing the entire time with. Not really too much to talk about. I will say that at least the manga and newer anime were trying to continue to develop everyone's powers, give them little moments here and there, whereas the original anime, everyone was just attacking all together, but there wasn't really time to really devote to character growth the same way the manga and newer anime were doing. So it's understandable. I just really like a lot of the moments from the manga and newer anime because, it's the last hurrah. We're getting close to the end. Give our heroes a little bit more growth, a little bit more shine before it's time to finally say goodbye. But the question is, which do you prefer? How proactively taking the Great Spirit or how inactive and taking the Great Spirit? I mean, it's still a race against the clock either way. It's just that the obstacles that our heroes face could either be How himself or just those who protect How. Let me know your thoughts in the comments section below. If you like this video, feel free to subscribe so you don't miss out on the next one. And I hope that you'll join me, Duuz-Diz-Din, in the next episode of What's the Difference? But until then, I'll see you later. Till then, bye-bye!